There's a big bombshell out of this. So out of the Hillary Clinton lawyer trial, this what came out. Sussman trial exhibits have been released and include some CrowdStrike FBI DNC exchanges and the alleged DNC hack. Here, Sussman, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, edits an FBI press release about the DNC hack. Hillary Clinton's lawyer is editing FBI press releases about the hack that supposedly came from Russia at the DNC server. That's what this proves. Watch this. So this is from Jim Traynor at the FBI. He's sending this to Michael Sussman, Hillary Clinton's lawyer. Michael, our press office is once again getting a ton of calls on the DCCC matter. Now, he means the DNC server, right?
Well, both the DNC and the DCCC were alleged to have been hacked.
Oh, okay. So it's the same hack. A draft response is provided below. Wanted to get your thoughts on this prior to sending it out. So the FBI is running it past Hillary Clinton's lawyer before they release a press release about their investigation into the alleged hacking of the DNC. And here it is. So here's their press release. He's showing it to Hillary Clinton's lawyer. Is this okay? Hillary Clinton's lawyer says it is not okay. In fact, I want you to change the first line. He says, I have a comment/concern regarding the first sentence and have suggested a revised first sentence below. He changes the first sentence. And the FBI is like, okay, nice work. He says the draft you sent says, oh, blah, blah, who cares? The point is he did it. And the
Jimmy, you know what? Jimmy, it's an important change.
Okay, what was important? I read it. I didn't see. Tell me what was important.
The original FBI draft said the FBI, and I'm paraphrasing here.
So here, I'll read it to you. I'll read it. Okay. The original.
Just read the first sentence.
The FBI is aware of the recent media reporting on a possible cyber intrusion involving the DCCC, and it's working to determine the nature and scope of the matter. Here's what they changed it to. The FBI is aware of the cyber intrusion involving the DCCC that has been reported in the media, and the FBI has been working to determine the nature and scope of the matter. What is the key thing there?
So, Jimmy, the key word there that is lost from the original FBI wording to the Michael Sussman wording is the word possible. The FBI in the original one says we're aware of a possible cyber intrusion, which means we're aware of a possible hacking. So the FBI is not saying here that this was definitely hacking, i.e. this definitely was Russia. Michael Sussman then complains and says, if you put that out, that undermines, that's a quote, undermines our narrative.
Here it is.
Word undermine. So that's what.
Yeah. So yeah, he says the draft you sent says only that the FBI is aware of media reports. It does not say that the FBI is aware of the intrusion that the DCCC reported. Indeed, it refers only to a possible cyber intrusion, and in that way undermines what the DCCC said in the statement. You're right. So go ahead.
So the FBI was basically saying at first that, this is a possible cyber intrusion, but we don't know. That's because we need to access the servers, which are being denied to us by CrowdStrike and Michael Sussman and the DNC. So Michael Sussman's angry at the suggestion that the FBI might not see this as a hacking operation. So that's why he demands that they drop the word possible.
Possible, right.
The FBI complies.
And they did, and they do it. Yeah. So here's from Michael Sussman, sent to that guy at the FBI. And it says, Mike, I'm fine with... here's him responding. So the FBI guy says... Mike, I'm fine with the below suggestions. We try to really limit what we see and not acknowledging too much, but the below edits are fine and we will send out.
He's basically apologizing.
Is that what that is?
He's basically saying, he's trying to explain why he wasn't on board with, he wasn't immediately on board with with presenting the Democratic Party narrative. But look, it speaks to the extensive amount of and inappropriate control that Michael Sussman and the Clinton campaign had over an FBI investigation in which they were deeply implicated. Because as Michael Sussman and the Clinton campaign were accusing Trump of having ties to Russia, they also were accusing Russia of stealing emails from Clinton to benefit Trump. So it's hugely inappropriate for these people to have anything to do with this investigation.
I know.
But here they are editing press releases and also controlling what the FBI was allowed to see as they're trying to pressure the FBI to make public their allegation, the Clinton campaign's allegation that Russia stole the emails. And I've reported on this before. Immediately after CrowdStrike went public and said that Russia hacked the DNC, Sussman was meeting with the FBI behind the scenes and pressuring them to go public and agree with CrowdStrike. And the FBI was saying, well, you haven't shown us anything yet, so we need to see it. And that's what comes out from, you know, these exhibits in this trial, which is that meanwhile, Sussman was working very hard to get the FBI on board with this narrative, as he does here with editing their press release. And still, it took months before CrowdStrike and Sussman shared the forensics and other information with the FBI. That's also what's come out. And ultimately, the FBI still only got very limited visibility because Sussman himself personally redacted reports that CrowdStrike wrote about the alleged DNC hack before they were given to the FBI. So even when the FBI finally got CrowdStrike's reports, they were limited in what they could see because Sussman kept certain stuff on. So
the FBI's reports on the DNC hack came from Hillary Clinton's lawyer. That's where they came from. They didn't come. Yes, they didn't come from an unbiased third party. They didn't come from the FBI. They came from people who were planting the story. And
in those critical first months of the investigation, absolutely. And later on, they claimed they got more information, but we've never seen that. We've never seen that intelligence they got. So it's very difficult to make a judgment. So, but yes, in that crucial period of the initial, like when Russiagate kicked off, up until January 2017, when it really even exploded even more, when the U.S. released that intelligence report accusing Russia of hacking the Clinton campaign. Yes, it was basically CrowdStrike. That's what they're relying on, and by CrowdStrike, I mean Michael Sussman and the Clinton campaign.
So what I want people to realize in this segment is that what this shows you, and what I'm going to, a video I'm going to show you in a second. What does it show you? Well, it shows you, as this guy says, so a lawyer from Perkins Coie, Hillary Clinton's lawyers, and a high-profile Democratic operative, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, is writing and rewriting press releases for the FBI on issues involving national security weeks before a presidential election. Got a problem with that? You should. So that's what was that. This should be an unbelievable scandal. It is not going to be a scandal. Why? Because this press doesn't want it to be, just like they didn't want you to read what was on Hunter Biden's laptop before the election. Same thing. They don't want you to know about it because why? Because it proves and reveals that the establishment media has been making up lies about Russia and Trump for 4 fucking years. That's what this proves, that this was all made up, and the FBI and Hillary Clinton's campaign, the Democrats, the media were all working in collusion. The real collusion wasn't Trump and Russia. It was FBI and Hillary Clinton's campaign. That's the collusion. And that's why this isn't going to be reported. And that's why no one's going to pay a price for this, because it would mean the establishment has to pay a price for it. And the establishment never pays a price for anything, which is why George Bush isn't in prison. So that's what that shows. Now it gets even worse. It turns out that the FBI had a semi-working office station place inside Hillary Clinton's campaign office place. You think I'm kidding? Here's what Fox News' Tucker Carlson reported. This is real. Watch this.
We're learning tonight much more about the connection between the FBI and Sussman's former law firm, Perkins Coie. Congressman Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan have just received a letter from Perkins Coie's attorneys. This show can report exclusively that in that letter, Perkins Coie admits the FBI has maintained a, quote, secure work environment within Perkins Coie offices for more than a decade, going back to 2012. What? According to the letter, quote, Perkins Coie is responsible to the FBI for maintaining the secure work environment. That workspace, whatever it is still in operation today. Ever heard of anything like that?
No, I've never heard of anything like that. And then so it made me think, well, maybe that's normal. Maybe that happens a lot. Maybe we're so stupid we don't know that there's a presidential campaign. Maybe But then it goes back to 2012 that the FBI has had this working platform thing inside of her office, so it can't be about it. So then, guess what? Well, Matt Gaetz has this to say. By the way, you remember Matt Gaetz was supposed to be in prison already. I wonder what happened to all that. But here we go.
And will be ignored by the media. And to the extent they can't ignore it, they'll say, well, this is just normal. There are good reasons for this. You're an attorney. You serve with a lot of other attorneys. This is not normal, correct?
I have spoken to former federal prosecutors on the Judiciary Committee and throughout the country, and I have not heard any describe a relationship like this with a private law firm, and especially because Michael Sussman was an election lawyer. Why in the world would an election lawyer be operating this facility in this way? And our concern is that politically motivated dirt was being converted into politically motivated investigations. That's why Jim Jordan and I are making demands for answers on Christopher Wray immediately. And it's my hope, certainly, that we shut this facility down.
So let me bring in Aaron Mate. Aaron, what do you make of this?
Well, Jimmy, I have to be careful here because I haven't looked into this. And I don't know, there might be some benign explanation that we're not aware of, but on the surface, without knowing the details, it does look very sketchy. I mean, for example, one benign explanation could be that Michael Sussman wasn't involved with this, and this is some other wing of Perkins Coie that Michael Sussman has nothing to do with. So I have no idea. But if it's all true, then yeah, it raises more questions. And overall, look, what we know.
Well, we already know that Michael Sussman was rewriting. Editing FBI press releases about the Russiagate affair. We already know that.
And also, by the way, he also had a security clearance. He had an FBI badge, basically, where he could just pass through in the lobby and go through. He was cleared. So he was deep in the FBI. And that speaks to, look, this Russiagate thing was carried out by a lot of people, and they're all part of essentially the same club. Sean Henry, the head of CrowdStrike, the firm hired by Clinton that generated the Russian hacking allegation, was the first to accuse Russia of hacking the DNC. Before he worked for CrowdStrike, he worked for the FBI. And who did he work for? Robert Mueller. So when Robert Mueller took over the Russia investigation, now he is inheriting an investigation that has been relying on the work product of CrowdStrike, headed by his former close colleague, Sean Henry. So the idea that these people were going to do a transparent investigation and not cover for each other is just ridiculous. And that's what they did. It was a racket to cover for each other. And that's why Robert Mueller, for all the damning revelations that have come out, for example, about Michael Sussman and Alpha Bank, why didn't Robert Mueller tell us about any of this? He was supposed to be investigating Trump's alleged ties to Russia. And so as a part of that, if you learn that the FBI has given false information by Trump's political opponent, why wouldn't you investigate that and make that public? Isn't it criminal to give the FBI
false information?
Deliberately false information? It sounds criminal. Why didn't Robert Mueller investigate that? Robert Mueller's job was not to investigate any real Trump-Russia ties, because there are none. There was no conspiracy. Everyone knows that now. His job was to make the FBI investigation look credible, because the FBI investigation, no matter what the official story is, was heavily influenced by the Steele dossier and the Clinton campaign.
And they lied.
Know that because.
Go ahead.
Well, and we know that because, as I've reported on before, I've written about this, we're supposed to believe that the FBI opened up its investigation based on a tip it got from this Australian diplomat. Even though you look at the contents of that tip, and there's nothing in there to open up an investigation on. There's talk of a suggestion of some kind of some unspecified Russian help to the Trump campaign. Nothing about the emails, the stolen emails. Nothing about a troll farm and all the other stuff. Nothing about collusion. Nothing even about a Russian national. Just some random tip that the FBI got. And before that happened, the FBI, top officials had gotten the Steele dossier. It was being passed around. An FBI agent flew out to meet with Christopher Steele in London because he was so excited to receive it. Victoria Nuland, who you've talked about a lot, is the official who oversaw the U.S. coup in Ukraine. She was the one who authorized Steele. She was the one who authorized the FBI agent to go meet with Steele. This is in early July, weeks before the FBI investigation officially opened. And we're supposed to believe that the Steele dossier had nothing to do with the FBI's decision to open up its investigation. So Robert Mueller's job was to make the FBI probe look credible And that's why they dragged it on for as long as they did, with all of those indictments written to suggest as if they had something when they knew they had nothing at all.
Well, look how the mainstream news is reporting it. I'll give you one example. This is Rolling Stone. Trump's crusade to prove the Russia investigation was fraudulent is collapsing. So when you say, well, there was no collusion with Trump and everybody knows that now, you know that regular people certainly don't know that, and the corporate media is not reporting it still, right?
Members of the club called Blue Anon, because they're part of a cult, will never acknowledge that, because their cult orthodoxy relies on believing in this conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset and that Vladimir Putin brainwashed millions of Americans with his sophisticated social media bots. That's the belief that they need to explain reality. That's cult behavior. It's called Blue Anon. And they happen to reside in the top perches of the US media. But everybody else who was not being brainwashed by 5+ years of Russiagate propaganda knows that the idea of a conspiracy theory, of a conspiracy between Trump and Russia, and Trump being blackmailed with P-tapes and secret meetings between Michael Cohen and Russian hackers in Prague, that all of that is as kooky as anything out of QAnon. That's why we call it Blue Anon. So yes, the members of Blue Anon happen to be the most influential people in the country, the top members of the Democratic Party and the media, but everybody else, I mean. And look, Jimmy, just one final thing I'll say. You mentioned before how nobody will pay a price for this. That's absolutely right. People who will pay the price is us. That's and the entire world. Because we're seeing right now, this escalating proxy war in Ukraine is a direct result of Russiagate. Trump came into office speaking about getting along with Russia. Now, maybe that was a con along with many other things that he conned the country about. But at least that's what he said he wanted to do. And what the national security state did was sabotage any possibility of diplomacy with Russia. That's what Russiagate was used for. Trump was basically pressured heavily to send more weapons to Ukraine, to tear up nuclear treaties with Russia. And Trump, wanting to please his neocon friends in Washington, did everything they wanted. And especially he had the incentive to not look like a Russian agent and try to dispel that rumor and that allegation against him that he was doing Vladimir Putin's bidding. So Trump, not being a very, I think, strong president, was successfully intimidated into being even more hawkish than I think he probably personally wanted to be, because at least he was talking about getting along with Russia when he came in, and all that was sabotaged. And now we're paying the price of that with this Ukraine proxy war. So it's us who are paying the price, and the people around the world who are now going to face higher food prices, higher fuel prices, and possibly even nuclear war. We're the ones who are going to pay the price.
And we are paying it. And we just talked with Professor Richard Wolff, when are the people going to stand up? How much more are they going to take? We'll see. We'll see. Hey, we're doing stand-up comedy in Irvine, California, Las Vegas, San Diego, Salt Lake City, Indianapolis, Louisville, all over the place. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets.